Yeah, it's like really like more sanitized this time of year.
It really doesn't run through it, but I mean,
Oh, it doesn't?
no, it gets charged off to different departments.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Like,
Well, that's all. Because I think they're all. Okay. Meeting, please come to order. Thank you. Say the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, let's see, any public comment? No, Mayor. All right. Are there any amendments to the agenda?
No. So maybe.
Mayor's report. Well, in this COVID atmosphere that we find ourselves, I'm always telling people, check back and see if it's still on or if it has been canceled, because so many things have. And but we are coming to a time in our community where big questions are about schools and about Bethany College returning and sports being able to be played and all of those things. If you have specific questions or concerns, I've been telling people for the past month, please step forward and express yourself what you feel about something. Later on in our agenda tonight, we will be discussing the decision that was made by the McPherson County Commissioners, which goes opposite from what Governor Kelly was hoping, I think, that our state would do as far as wearing masks. The commissioners, I'm sure you've all seen this, but the commissioners have voted to not require mask wearing and to go along with what Governor Kelly said. I don't know how many of you follow the spread of the virus. Today we're up to 84. So 2 new ones in the last 2 days or something like that, I don't know. Many of these are asymptomatic, and so that presents, I think there's a lot of people that don't understand that. We cannot pretend like this isn't happening. This is happening. We can't put our head in the sand, think that it won't happen to us. It is happening to us. As council members for this community, that you are charged with making decisions that are the best decisions for the population of Lindsborg. I think that we always need to remember that it's not just my own personal view on something, what is the best for us as a community. One of the things that I think is somewhat analogous here is when we decide that we're going to spray for mosquitoes, and we just spray for mosquitoes, and then we will start getting cards and letters from people saying, I don't like that, I don't want you doing that. But we know that this is what science is telling us. This is the best opportunity that we have to control something in our community that is very dangerous for our citizens. And so we do it, and we have done it for years. And so later on in our agenda tonight, we will be discussing how we all feel about mask wearing, where we think this takes place in our community. So I hope you've had some time to think about that or remember conversations you've had with many people. I really don't have any other announcements as far as events happening and welcoming guests and that kind of thing. I do know we do have a budget meeting to schedule.
Correct.
Want to do that now?
That's up to you.
Okay, let's everybody look at your calendars, please. I know, Greg, you want to have that happen in July, right?
It needs to happen by a week from Wednesday.
Okay. All right. So a week from Wednesday is the 15th. What does everybody have on the 13th, which is a week from today, in the evening? Does that work? Okay. Let's do it.
13th?
13th. At what time do you want to do it?
6:30 work is a good time for everybody.
All right. And I'll be here.
Yes, they'll be here.
And the agenda for that night will be what?
Review the draft of the 2021 operations and maintenance budget.
So the budget that we looked at 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, whatever that was capital improvement budget.
Correct.
That's, everybody understand the difference between all these things, okay? So,
I will tell you that it will probably be at least 3 hours long to go through all the different funds. I can see you sneering at me.
Roxy, could you make sure that Mark Friesen knows about this meeting? Actually, he's not here tonight. All right, here are no other amendments to the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second? Second. Moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Roxy?
Actually, there's a correction to the minutes.
Oh.
We had a Kirsten Johnson who approved something today.
Oh.
Did you get that? Yes, it's on page 5, I think, right before the executive session.
She's not here.
Well, especially, like, since it was a Johnson Controls contract, the picture wasn't.
An insight.
Yeah, there you go.
Thanks, Rebecca. Yeah.
So I guess approving as amended.
As amended.
Okay.
Jody? Emo?
Yes.
Rebecca?
Yes.
Blaine?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Kirsten?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Consent agenda is approved. Chief? Mike Davis? Appointments?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just have a couple of appointments. One request to our emergency medical services and one to our fire department. I'm requesting the acceptance of a new member to the volunteer ambulance service for the city of Lindsborg. The new member is Teresa Pearson. Teresa is a nurse practitioner working in the emergency room for both Lindsborg Community Hospital as well as Clay County Hospital. She has certifications as a paramedic in advanced trauma life services. She's also served as a flight medic prior to working at both hospitals. She wants to volunteer for our service to assist with transports that require advanced medical life support services. And she's interested in just being a volunteer to our community. Our volunteer fire member is Rod Schrage. If I said that right, I'm not sure. Schrage. He works for our Public Works Department. He's also been a previous firefighter for 22 years of experience with 2 different rural fire districts. It's his desire to continue to volunteer his services by volunteering for our fire department in our community. So I'm asking that we accept both of them as appointments to our public safety team.
All right. Do I have a motion to approve these 2 appointments?
So moved.
Second? Moved and seconded to approve these 2. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Tell them thank you very much.
I will thank you.
The library board. There are 3, 4, Marilyn Burrell, Lauren Hett, Mary Carter. 3 appointments. These are all returning members to the library board. Would like someone to make a motion to approve these 3 positions?
Mayor and council. Feel as though I need a chair for this evening. First item is the CLIPS Award. We had bid opening for that on June 23rd. This has been an ongoing process for, I think, 3 years now that we started it, looking into it, and we finally had bid opening. This project is to repair some deficiencies along the K4 from South Main to the western city limits. It will see patch repair and resurface, or milling and resurfacing of the road. This is a project that is funded by federal and state funds. This particular project will pay for 90% of the cost up to $300,000. That leaves the city's share of the cost at $14,502.15 roughly. There were 2 bids that were submitted for this project. One from APAC Shears, which does most of the work around here, and the other one was from Flint Hills Materials. They're a relatively new company. They've been in business for about 5 years now. They did submit references along with their bid package. The engineer did also follow up with some calls on references to check their work and their history, and they seem to be an acceptable contractor. So with that, I'd like to make a motion to approve the notice to award an agreement to Flint Hills Materials in the amount of $290,043 for the K4 Clips resurfacing project.
Do I hear a motion to approve this? So, second?
Second.
Any discussion? Chris, where was Flint Hills from?
They were from Wichita.
Did you say, have they done work before?
They've done some work, not for us, but they've done some work south in McPherson, Marion, I believe a little bit in Reno County. So they're venturing up into this area.
Any other discussion? Roxy?
Jody?
Yes.
Emo?
Yes.
Rebecca?
Yes.
Blaine?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Kirsten?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Motion is approved. Thank you, Chris. Next item?
Thank you. The next item is a chip seal program for the year. We've been back and forth as to what we were going to do with the road maintenance this year. We were going to try and do North Main Street as a complete project. Then when everything started happening, we started re-evaluating it and looking at trying to split it in half. That really doesn't make much financial sense because it's about $40,000 more to do it in a 2-year program. So we decided that we would just carry those majority of those funds over, although we have some funds that we have to spend. So I've put together a chip seal program for the year to try and gain on some of the chip seal that's not been done on a regular basis. I think 2017 was the last we did it. This puts a little extra funds at it and gets us kind of starting to catch up a little bit. So I was able to get 2 bids. I got a bid from Circle C Paving, which has been doing the chip seal for us, and I was able to get a bid from APAC Shears as well, and they came in quite a bit more. So we're looking for a motion to approve a bid from Circle C Paving in the amount of $64,469.60 to chip seal city streets.
Do I hear a motion to approve this?
Motion to approve. for the, you say the north end of town, is that right?
No, there are three to four streets up on the north end of town that are just one block streets. The rest of this project is keyed more toward the south part of town, hitting a broader area. The north end are four independent streets that have needed to be addressed for quite a few years.
So are you going to try to put Main Street in the budget for next year?
Correct, that is the plan, yes. And we'll hope that
And
it
what
makes
was
it.
the total cost of that?
Excuse me?
What was the cost of the Main Street portion?
We were at around 196,000, if I remember right.
Close to $200,000.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we won't be losing that much more next year. Hopefully, we
No.
get that. Okay.
No.
All right, any other discussion? Roxy?
Ted?
Yes.
Kirsten?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Blaine?
Yes.
Rebecca?
Yes.
Emo?
Yes.
Jody?
Yes.
Okay, this is the Chris show tonight.
Yes.
Next item?
Third item, we put the items together for electric materials for Stockholm Estates last council, I believe. We did not have the transformers included in that bid. We were looking at different companies that deal with transformers. Majority of time, we have always dealt with Solomon Electric, and they have had some up and downs over the last number of times we've dealt with them, so we wanted to try and find out what else was out there. We're also evaluating the use of new versus remanufactured transformers as well. The majority of transformers within our community are all remanufactured, and they serve well. They're built of higher, I don't say higher qualities, but they're built of better materials of coppers, a lot more copper in them, where newer ones are a lot more aluminum. So we wanted to evaluate those situations. The electric department wanted to tour both Solomon, and they wanted to tour another place in Newton called Midwest Transformers. They were interested in how they did things. So they did those, and they came up with relatively similar comparisons with the two. Their big difference was Solomon is more of a manufacturing business, where Midwest seems to be more of a personal hands-on. Each and every person that's there has worked and dealt with this business for many, many years. It's kind of an offshoot company. These people have been at Solomon for years, and they've started their own company. So they're wanting to do well, and they're wanting to give great customer service, and they got a very good feeling from that. So we're looking for a motion to approve the purchase of 10 transformers for Midwest Transformers in the amount of $15,300. That is $105 higher than the Solomon, but we feel like the difference in price is justified in what the Midwest has to offer. So.
Is there a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? Any other discussion?
I'm glad whenever you can tour places and get an idea of who you're dealing with.
It was a very beneficial trip to them, especially with a new superintendent, Rod. He was able to make some connections. I use the example with what this company has done. The company that we deal with the sewer cleaning, Mayor Specialty Services, is an offshoot company of utility maintenance. Employees went out on their own and started a business, and they do fantastic work. We've had tremendous luck with them. We get the same feeling with Midwest Transformers, that same situation. So touring them really was a very helpful thing for them.
Any other comments?
There will be one more transformer included that will have to be approved at a later date. We don't have the specifications for the lift station. There will be one more required at some point in time for that. So.
All right. Roxy?
Blaine?
Yes.
Rebecca? Emo?
Yes.
Jody? Yes. Ed?
Yes.
Kirsten? Yes. Rick?
Yes.
A couple weeks ago, we started having problems with well number 8, which is located next to Tackle. Well number 8 is now utilized for irrigation at the ball complex at the college, as well as the new baseball diamond built north of there a couple of years ago. There's a contract in place with the college and the school district, I believe, that they take care of certain parts of it. We take care of the well and the pump and motor and all the associated parts of that. We were having problems with that. Had A1 well service come out and pull the pump. Turned out the pump was bad, the motor was bad, so we had to replace everything. We didn't want to wait because it was getting hot, and we didn't want all the new grass at the ball field to go and be killed from lack of water. So we went ahead and replaced that. So now we're just looking for a motion to approve the replacement of the pump and motor at well 8 from A1 Well Services in the amount of $6,519.
So moved.
Second? Did you say second? All right, any discussion? Where is this money coming from?
This will come from water funds capital outlay.
Contract services.
Okay,
Okay.
there's money in that account, so.
Yes.
So it's been replaced and it's working, it's running, and we're getting water on
We're getting water on. We're having a few issues with it giving us an overload alarm. We're going to have A1 come take a look at it tomorrow and see if something didn't get hooked up right or if there's an issue. But other than that, it seems to be working fine now.
Any other questions, concerns?
Kirsten.
Yes.
Ed.
Yes.
Jody. Yes. Emo.
Yes.
Rebecca.
Yes.
Blaine.
Yes.
Rick.
Yes.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Spent a lot of money on public works. Okay. But thank goodness. Yeah, Chris in charge. All right, the next item, community-wide mandatory mask discussion. You should have all received a copy of what the ordinance that the city of Wichita passed last Friday. This is just FYI for all of you to see what their discussions were and what they think about this. Trying to kind of think what is the best way to generate discussion here among all of us. Anybody want to go first?
Well, I'm in favor of the governor's mandate. I think it's in the best interest of public safety, and I think it's counterproductive for local agencies to undermine the governor's authority in issuing that order.
Discussions?
I'm not in favor of anything that infringes on people's liberties and freedoms. I approve of anything close to that. I feel like if people want to wear masks, they're going to wear masks. I want to be here tonight, go wear them.
I would take the opposite stance of that, but I think it's my health if someone else doesn't wear a mask. So I'm wearing my mask to protect other people, and I've asked them to wear their masks to protect me. And it's science and research is clear on it.
Same thing can be said for wearing helmets on motorcycles.
If we were discussing that, that would be great.
But I think we're considering an ordinance for the sort of
We are talking about, we don't have an ordinance, but we just gave you the one that Wichita had passed. It's Wichita had, and they resulted in that ordinance that they passed last Friday.
I see this ordinance has penalties associated with it for the first time offense of $50, the second time offense of $100, and third offense of $200. So I assume that means that the police department is responsible for enforcing and maintaining such offenses.
Yeah, under this ordinance, that is the difference. Under the governor's executive order, it was a civil process where upon complaint, the police department takes the information, forwards it on to the county attorney for any potential civil action. Under Wichita's ordinance, it's an infraction. And so upon violation and complaint, a ticket would be issued, and then depending on first, second, third offense, then that fine would be assessed. I'm assuming that court costs would be on top of that since it is an infraction, but I don't know that with certainty.
Court costs in Lindsborg are, how much?
I don't know off the top of my head.
65, 85?
Probably more in the $85 range by the time you, I'm sorry,
I think 85, but. I don't
Yeah.
know that.
by the time we, I mean, a good portion of what we assess for court costs go to the state judicial system. I think out of what we charge for court costs, the city itself gets $25.
Now, the city of Wichita declared a state of emergency in order to enact this, correct?
It allowed them to enact it without publication. In other words, it allowed them to take effect immediately.
Right.
Yes.
We do not have to.
Well, it depends on when you want it to take effect. Well, you're required to publish, or, yeah, so if you want to wait until it's published in the official newspaper, then no, you would not have to take or declare a state of emergency. If you want it to take effect immediately, then a state of emergency would need to be declared, and then it can go into effect immediately.
Can we declare a state of emergency if we don't know how many people, if anybody in Lindsborg has COVID?
Yes.
Okay.
But we already know, right?
I've never seen it in any of the reports.
And you want,
They don't define location in the county health department reports unless
I know people who live here, so that's good.
unless there is tracing issues that happen in a location, and they will say they don't know who all came in contact with somebody at a specific location. Then they will put the name of the location out there so that those people that may have had contact with them can take necessary precautions.
Now, this as it stated is, ordinance can be placed on first reading for consideration with adoption upon the date of publication after a second reading. That would mean there would be 2 meetings according to how they did it if they did not enact the state of emergency,
That is correct.
which would be how normal ordinance goes, correct?
For them, yes.
Okay.
We only do essentially one reading, and then it's either adopted or not adopted, and then published.
As I look at the exemptions here, I mean, they run from A to K. You're going to have a considerable number of people that
reason or another, the exemptions, I don't know how you're going to enforce or determine if you're in a public space, why someone may or may not be wearing a mask. The other question I have is if this were passed, and I have no idea what the school district is thinking or what, the plans are with public school going forward. And, maybe they're trying to determine how they're going to have a mask policy or not outside of this. If this were something that was, adopted through the city, I just think that's going to be a challenging situation to then be enforced in schools. And maybe that's an issue that's separate from this, but that's one area of concern I have.
If schools go back into session, I think we're gonna have to wear masks. I mean, that's what most of the information I've heard coming down from different school entities are, but it doesn't come until Friday, I think, some of the recommendations come out from the Department of Ed, but
I believe the school district has gone on record as saying that students and staff will be required to wear masks in social distance cannot be maintained. And that's a response to basically they stated they will follow the county Board of Health recommendations.
And then Bethany College, I think, has announced that they will be wearing masks in the privacy of your own dorm room. It's up to you. But classes, cafeteria,
but this such an ordinance goes along with the Board of Health recommendation, right? Isn't that what it said in the updates from the health departments? Board of Health recommends you wear masks.
Yes, I mean, this fairly well mirrors the governor's executive order, except for the portion that deals with, under the governor's, it's civil. Under this with the city of Wichita, it's an infraction. That's probably the biggest deviation of the two.
So why did one do one and one do the other?
I don't know the answer to that. I can't.
Right? Look to you, all the answers.
I found it interesting how persons engaged in an activity or event held or managed by the Kansas legislators is it.
Also found that.
That's nice.
And the court system. Sure.
The people that are going to prosecute you and fine you don't have to. So would police officers have to wear masks while on duty in the 100-degree weather?
Yes, and in terms of right now, many times they're already wearing a mask in certain situations, correct, Chief?
We are now. In most situations.
when you think about in McPherson County, by the end of this month, we will have approximately 1,500 more people living here in our county because of McPherson College, Bethany College, and Central College. These 1,500 people are coming from all over the place. And our numbers are still going up. And in Kansas, and we are one of the states, they're lumped in there with other states that are just going off the charts. This concerns me. This concerns me a lot. And from what I've heard about the schools, that they will be wearing masks.
understand the argument of personal liberty to a point, but when you look at vehicles, you have mandatory seatbelt laws that didn't used to be there. There's probably many of us that have a scar on our left shoulder from MMR inoculations within the school district. And pretty well measles was eradicated until the last few years, and with the anti-vaccine movement coming back up. So, you know, the idea of wearing masks from a public health standpoint, I don't think is necessarily precedent setting, because there was a major effort of eradicating measles, mumps, and rubella years ago with mandatory shots. Even today, you're required to get those vaccines to go to school. So.
Comments? There are 3 or 4 people here from the public. I'm going to give you an opportunity at this point. Do you have anything that you'd like to say? Anybody? Oh, okay. That's fine.
Initially, let me thank you on behalf of some of the other members here for the opportunity to share with the council. That's a benefit of a large community as well as a small community. So thank you for that. I can understand the idea of freedom of choice. Thankfully, in our country, we have that opportunity. And yet there are some ideas, too, that I think are beneficial in regards to making decisions on what's best for the community. I've given reasonable amount of study in this for certain reasons, and I apologize for being personal about this, but I've had the good fortune of living in Lindsborg for over 40 years, so I'm familiar with the community and the people in it and some of their goals. But here's what I asked myself to evaluate the idea, and I am supportive of mandatory masks. I asked myself, number one, do I care about those people that I cross paths with? Do I care about those children that we meet? Then I asked myself, do I care about myself and the health that I have with responsibility in the family? And then I thought, well, hey, I'm just an educator, a coach. I'm not a scientist. I'm not in the medical profession per se. What are the people that are scientists? What are the people in the medical profession say is the direction to go with this? And then I got to a point where I have a responsibility in this community to teach health. I took classes through the Kansas State Department of Medical Health, class through Stanford University, and thanks to the Lindsborg Hospital. And I teach classes dealing with self-management of health. And I would feel guilty myself if I didn't feel that occupying or being responsible for my health and the health of the students that I have, if I didn't look at what's best for the individuals involved. And then before coming over here this evening, you have to forgive me, I'm not exactly sure of the exact number, but I think over 200 research experts in the care, the medical care, as well as a reference to research on COVID-19, indicated this is now airborne, which means it's not just coming from speaking, it can portray itself. So I would hope that you would take seriously some of those points that I made in regards to the decision we made. Thank you.
Sir, may I ask you, when were you made aware of this meeting, this topic of discussion?
Well, I know in the past that you've always had meetings, but I was made more aware of it in a meeting that I had this morning with the group meeting at Bethany Lutheran Church, dealing with the various studies dealing with the Bible and Christianity.
I'm just curious, because the council packet that I got last week had no mention of this, and the first I heard of it was when I sat down here and saw it on the agenda.
You brought it up in the agenda through email.
I didn't get it online, sorry about
Thank you.
that.
Good evening, council and mayor. My name is Chandra Cooper, and as a private citizen of this community, I am here before you to request of the council and the city to find a way to affirm and/or uphold the recent executive order requiring the use of face masks in public indoor spaces while we face the challenges and consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic, for which we do not yet have a vaccine. This should not be approached as a political act. It should be treated as an act of responsibility and care for the public health of this community during unusual circumstances. This will not go on forever. This is rather short term in the duration of most of our lives. As visitors arrive, as our people return from summer excursions and our kids participate in club sports, our risk of exposure increases. Simply requiring the public use of masks and social distancing protocols helps our community to avoid the social and economic consequences of an outbreak and another possible shutdown. Emil, I only know that this council meets twice a month on Monday at 6:30. Once I learned that the county commissioners chose to exempt the county from the governor's executive order, I made the unusual decision to show up to your meeting, not knowing what was on your agenda.
Good.
Thank you for your time and service.
Thank you, Chandra. Suzanne?
Is this the microphone that works?
It's not on.
Oh.
Ask you to speak loudly.
I know, I couldn't hear a lot, and if I repeat what somebody said earlier, I couldn't hear all that. Can you hear me? Okay, good. I just thought about what I was going to say walking up here, so I'm not real prepared. But I'm going to tell you, as a teacher and a person who really cares for young children, I am thinking about them through all this. First of all, their safety, and second of all, their mental health in going through this after they've been through a lot already. So I'm really concerned about having to wear these and not knowing why and not wanting to. We might have some parents that are extremely upset, more so even than with the computer and the self-teaching or the teaching that went on at home. And I know there are many, many teachers that are at-home teachers, parents, that were extremely frustrated with that happening. Not knowing how to do it, not knowing the technology and all. So we're stepping into adding another thing to this, which I support. I think we should wear these. But I think that I'm wondering where someone is from the school district in this regard, and addressing those children and those teachers who have to deal with this. Now, a big, big thing in the daily routine of the school, a big thing. So how to address that, I don't have the answer to that, but I'm just advocating for young people, mainly, on having to wear this, how we're going to educate them. I'm thinking of the park issue that we dealt with years back, that, who was in charge, Barry McMillan, how they involved the children to acclimate them to that new setting. They involved them actively, telling about it, sharing about it, listening about it, and if we get children involved in this process. And that, I don't know if that's the council's job, but the school district needs to be a part of this decision, I think, in addressing in setting the guidelines of whatever we set up based on what the governor has already said. But anyway, I'm advocating for young children and for the teachers and the parents of this issue. It's a concern to me to add another thing to their, to our situation. Thank you.
Ed, what are your thoughts?
First question, I don't know the Robert's Rules of Order, but what we discussed one time, the public input was at the beginning.
It
I was
is.
wondering, was this an exception, or
Well, the
why is
first-
public
the
input at this
first-
time?
Just because of the immediacy of the issue. And I think that it is always helpful to all of us to hear what people say. We're not making any decisions tonight. This is information gathering only. And the reason that you have the Wichita ordinance is just because this is what it might look like if that is something that this council would decide to do. But we're not doing that tonight. This is information gathering. Kind of like another cover that we talk about in the meetings. Any other concerns?
I think if we're going to continue the discussion on this, we should definitely make the public and mass aware.
And is that what we want to do?
Yeah, well, the last time I visited with my neighborhood about it, it was about 4-1 opposed to being a ordinance. They all thought it was a good idea to wear masks, but as far as an ordinance, it was 4-1 ratio opposed, the city requiring it.
My talking to people's been the opposite of that, so I think it's probably a good thing I was, who you're around and who you know, but I've had several people text me, several people email me as soon as the county commission came out, so.
Well, I think both of your opinions are what this is all about. I mean, this is the body that will make this decision. It's not me, it's not Greg, it's all of the city council is where this will go forward, if it goes forward. And just because what Wichita says maybe isn't what applies to us, we don't want that, if in fact we do want to live this. So,
Well, I think, a couple of things. I'd like to get some more input from people within the community and what their thoughts really are in terms of it. So I think it's good to discuss it. I'm open to it. I lean on both sides. From time to time, I think it's challenging to have an ordinance and then have 16 exemptions that exempts everybody under 5 years old. And then, you can go down through the exemptions. I just think that makes it rules that apply to some, it doesn't apply to others, so. I don't know if that makes sense.
Greg, you have some thoughts?
I would just encourage people to do some research on the number of cases in Hong Kong and their mask usage. It's one of the most compelling examples I've seen. It's an extremely population dense area and they have a very small number of cases and deaths associated with it. So take a look at those if you haven't already. And then, this is one of those where I guess I ask myself, like, what's the worst thing that happens if you do this? What's the worst thing that happens if you don't do this? I mean, I just think that's kind of what this is about, and for me, it's very clear in my opinion, but and I don't, it's not likely to change. But I think this is just one of those times when when you look at it that way, it may help in sorting through some of the less scientifically supported elements of the discussion.
You want anything more to say?
I could go on and on, but I think the best thing to do is probably to get some public input. I think most of the public is probably going to present many of the same feelings I have and other people around this room have, and it's going to give them an opportunity to voice how they're feeling about it and their concerns and issues. I already said, I'm one of those people that really support individual freedoms. But I'm one person. That's why we have a diverse group, and we have to have some people that are going to be that way, so.
I understand what everybody's saying. I kind of understand what everybody's saying. I can see both sides as well. I don't have a problem wearing a mask. I think it's a good idea, but like Ed, everybody that I talk to in my neighborhood is going to be against it. And since that's the board I'm representing, I would want to know more. Like I said, I mean, I didn't know this was coming either, so just the few that I've talked to have been opposed to it. So I looked today, everybody, we have 8 active cases in Person right now. Person County has 8 active cases. So like 7 days of recovery. I think that's really pretty low for like an entire county. So I don't know. I need to be more research and ask.
Now, just to your point, I mean, when you read the reports from the health departments, I mean, it's exploded since the stay-at-home order lifted. So, I mean, we had 20 to 25 pretty much all the way through mid-June. So, I mean, all these cases have exploded in the last
But I don't
2 weeks
consider
to a
that
month.
exploding.
Well, the health department does.
25,
So-
that's 50 cases, but.
But
some
as
cases
much
are
as it
covered.
travels so quickly and
Yeah.
spreads so fast, I mean, that's the
And
spread
I
that
think
we've
we need a
had.
little more time, but over the last week, it looks like it's maintained, it's been pretty stagnant, so maybe we're getting another, or we're going back down. I don't know.
I would
Can I ask it, maybe a stupid question, but is a case a confirmed,
Thank you.
what was that, confirmed positive case of COVID, or is it just someone that's been tested?
Well, you don't have, as I understand it, you don't have to have a positive test result to be counted as positive. So as an example, if you got a positive, you did have a confirmed positive case like in your home, and then additional people start having symptoms, they don't have to be tested to be assumed positive. So they're going to count, I mean, if they have symptoms. If you remain asymptomatic, then it's more gray, but.
I'm not sure about that. I think it's only if it's a positive test, you're counted as a positive COVID.
But I think if you get tested, you become a case.
You're a person of interest, I think is what it
Yes,
said, a
it's a-
PUI, up until you're tested, and then your number is a hard number that is counted. So we've had 83 or 87, whatever case it is, that have tested positive. My understanding.
But they don't, I mean, I just, they don't recommend that you get tested if you start having symptoms after a known exposure. So it seems unlikely that they would also count those because then you're not.
I don't think they can count it if you haven't tested positive.
Don't know about that.
I'm reading it, but it's,
I remember hearing about how New Zealand had beat it, and they had no cases for a period of time, and then somebody coming in, for a funeral brought it back, and they got it again. And I feel like until there's a vaccine, the odds of somebody getting it, anyone, even in this room, is probably pretty high. It's going to happen, because even if we shut everything down for 6 months, someone's going to fly in from New York that has it, to visit a college student, it's going to spread again. I just hope they come up with something, some kind of vaccine, so that this can kind of hold over.
But we know that we have been told that what is available to us right now is a social distancing washing our hands, using hand sanitizer, and wearing a mask. And that's all that is offered to us.
But two people wearing masks limits your exposure unless you're around getting it by like 95%. I mean, it's a large percentage that offers protection.
Well, I guess I would ask at this point to go talk to your friends and neighbors, talk to people within your ward, read up on this, listen to the facts that are being presented by the medical community, and educate yourself. Because the vote that you are giving is not a vote that is just about you. It's about what is the best thing for our community. So,
regarding the question of a household, someone's tested positive, those others in the household are not considered positive, and they would be tested if they develop symptoms.
Okay, sorry, I was calling it that on.
all right, anybody else have anything they would like to say before we adjourn?
Well, just on other,
Yes?
onto another subject.
Another.
Just a question, so the tower that is being built, or is it built completely? The cell phone tower, is that AT&T that constructed the tower?
MW Tower is the company that constructed the tower. Their lessee is AT&T. The construction of the tower is complete. The antennas have not been installed
Okay.
yet.
Thank you.
That's so sensitive to know. Anybody else have a,
I was asked about the status of the house at, I think, Second and Olson, we're just the basement is board, and it's, the lot's pretty overgrown with weeds. Is there anything that can be done to keep that cleaned up?
Well, we can reach out to the property owner and make them aware. The building permit's still active, but the status of it obviously is not much is moving forward on it currently.
I was supposed to begin talking to the contractor a couple weeks ago about sidewalk to replace that. He said they were finalizing some main issues and anticipated construction starting at any point, whether or not that happens. He is aware of the weeds starting to grow and has been told to get ahead of those before they get too out of control.
others? Your motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Your second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good night.
I don't know you well enough to hear.
Oh, we did it.
Yep. Yep.
I haven't
Not
said that.
that.
That's my.
It's trying to keep